The film opens in a vague country in West Africa, where we see a 12-year-old kid named AGU playing with his companions. He then carries a TV frame and offers to sell it to a man, calling it an imaginary television. He and his companions perform various acts behind the frame, like kung fu and dance. However, the man refuses to buy such a useless thing and sends them away. This disappoints the young boy, but he doesn't give up so easily. AGU approaches a soldier next and starts pitching his imaginary television as usual. Fortunately, the soldier consents to buy it and offers them food in return. Later, we discover that their country is at war, and AGU's town is in a buffer zone protected by peacekeeping forces. His father used to be a teacher, but now he's the village chief and always allows refugees from surrounding areas to stay on his property. Meanwhile, his mother stays at home and cares for AGU and his siblings, which includes his older brother and younger sister. One night, as his small family is having dinner, his father notices the television is missing its frame. Consequently, AGU promptly escapes the house and sleeps outside to avoid punishment. Days later, the villagers learn that the government has fallen, with military-aligned rebels seizing control of the country. As the rebel forces attack the town, many people flee to the capital for safety. AGU's father also decides to send his family there, while he and his oldest son stay behind. Mother is very unhappy with the decision, as she doesn't want the family to be separated, but father manages to convince her, saying that he needs to defend their land. The next day, a mass evacuation begins, and many villagers flee to the capital. AGU's father takes his wife and children to the bus stop, but most of the vehicles are full, and people are desperate. The driver says he can take the woman and the girl, so AGU must stay behind. The father argues with him and offers to pay a large sum of money, but the driver refuses. In the end, only the mother and younger sister leave, while AGU stays behind with his father and brother. Days later, the town is caught up in a battle between government forces and rebels. During the shootout, AGU's family and a few other men manage to hide inside a shed, avoiding gunfire. Unfortunately, government troops soon find their shelter and capture them. The soldiers then accuse them of being rebels, which AGU's father denies. He says that he's the village chief and only stayed behind to protect their land. Tragically, the soldiers don't believe them and accuse them of being enemies. AGU's father is then shot and killed, and his oldest son faces the same fate. The only one who manages to escape is AGU, who somehow makes it to the jungle. He then wanders the forest alone, eating anything edible he can find. After a few days, he gets caught in a rebel trap. As he considers what to do next, someone hits him and knocks him out. When he wakes up, he sees a group of rebel soldiers, mostly kids and teenagers. It turns out they are from a group called NDF, which stands for Native Defense Forces. They capture AGU and decide to punish him, believing he is a government spy. To determine his fate, they bring him to their leader, known as the Commandant. When the Commandant asks who captured the boy, a silent kid named Striker signals that he did. Following this, the Commandant calls his subordinate, to I, and asks what should be done with AGU. I assures him that he's just a kid and seems harmless, but the Commandant disagrees. He states that even a little kid has eyes to see and hands to pull a trigger. He then questions AGU about who he is and what he's doing there. The boy nervously describes how government soldiers attacked his village and killed his family. Hearing this, the Commandant sympathizes with the boy and announces that AGU will now join the NDF. He promises to train him to be a soldier so he can avenge his family's death. The unfortunate boy has no choice but to comply to save his life. Thereafter, the group begins marching forward, and AGU is assigned to carry their weapons. They soon arrive at their camp and start eating, but give nothing to AGU. When he asks for some food, a person named Preacher laughs at him, saying he won't get anything because he isn't a soldier yet. Instead, he orders the boy to stand up and salute them until he tells him to stop. Meanwhile, Stryker is brought to the Commandant's quarters, which he reluctantly agrees to. Over the next few days, AGU and the other children undergo brutal training to join the NDF. The Commandant also feeds them propaganda, claiming that the NDF is gradually winning the war and that they will be reunited with their families soon. The boys are tortured with burning wood, beaten, cut with sharp blades, and buried in pits. During this time, AGU forms a bond with Stryker since they are the youngest and share the same age. After some training, They leave the camp and plan a surprise attack on government vehicles crossing a bridge. They kill everyone in the attack, except for one man who survives the gunfire. The NDF then captures him and proceeds to torture him. The man begs and cries, claiming that he's just a worker who has come to fix the bridge. He pleads to be released, but the commandant shows no mercy. He hands a sword to AGU and orders him to kill the man. This terrifies the young boy, as he has never harmed anyone in his life. However, the commandant starts to manipulate him, saying that this man was part of the group that killed his family. After hearing this, AGU musters all his courage and strikes the man on the head. It hurts him badly, but he's still alive, so Stryker jumps into the act, and the two boys repeatedly hit the man until he finally dies. The commandant is impressed by AGU's actions and orders 2I to give him a gun. The boy accepts it, but his actions disgust him so much that he vomits on the ground. The next day, they march to a nearby town and slaughter many government soldiers there. They then celebrate by performing a ritual and consuming drugs. Later, the commandant summons AGU back to his room and states that he's impressed by his progress. He also informs him that they plan to spring to the capital soon, where he will be able to see his mother. This excites AGU, and the commandant starts to inhale some drugs. He then lies on the bed and asks the boy to please him. Sometime later, AGU leaves the room visibly disturbed after being assaulted by the commandant. Stryker immediately approaches his friend and silently consoles him, as he has experienced a similar situation. The next day, AGU seems a bit distant and is struggling to process what happened to him. Seeing this, Preacher tries to cheer him up and gives him some drugs, which make him very high. In the afternoon, the group arrives in a village and starts terrorizing the locals. They enter a house and find a woman and her daughter hiding in a corner. AGU, who is still high on drugs, hugs the woman and calls her MOM. But he soon realizes that he was tripping, and she isn't his mother. He then sees Stryker and a few boys beating the girl and eventually killing her. Meanwhile, the mother is being assaulted by Preacher. The sight disturbs AGU so much that he shoots the woman to save her from the pain. Soon after, the commandant gets a letter from the Supreme Commandant named Great Blood. It turns out, Great Blood has summoned a group to the rebel headquarters to meet with him. The commandant then gathers his soldiers and advises them to prepare to leave. He particularly tells Stryker and AGU to stay close to him, since he cares about them. The next day, the group arrives at Great Blood's office. The commandant becomes restless with his boss for not ordering an attack on the capital. He suggests they proceed, but Great Blood informs him that their plans have changed, and they will no longer attack the capital. He also reveals that the commandant is not being promoted as he had hoped, but is instead being removed from his position. Instead, 2I will be the new leader, and the commandant will be assigned to a staff position under him. Hearing this, 2I tries to thank Great Blood, but the commandant interrupts and orders him to leave. In the evening, he takes his group to a brothel, stating that he wants to celebrate 2I's promotion. The latter requests permission to leave so he can check on other units, but the commandant denies it. After this, all the soldiers except AGU and Stryker pick a woman to spend time with. Not long after, Stryker falls asleep while AGU gazes at a waitress with interest. Suddenly, they are all startled by a gunshot in another room. The soldiers then find 2I, who has been severely injured by a gunshot. It turns out, a prostitute accidentally shot him while playing with a gun. 2I accuses the commandant of orchestrating this, but the latter claims to be innocent. The prostitute who shot 2I tries to escape, but AGU shoots her. Meanwhile, the brothel owner is also shot by Stryker. In the following scene, AGU is seen sniffing opiates, indicating that he has become addicted. He then goes to check on the injured 2I, who murmurs with his last breath that everything they did was in vain. After 2I passes away, AGU is left feeling angry and upset. The commandant also claims to be devastated and expresses how much 2I meant to him. Subsequently, a small funeral is held for 2I, during which the commandant declares Supreme Commander Great Blood their new enemy. He urges the soldiers to stop waiting for Great Blood's orders and start acting on their own. Later, while they are resting, they are suddenly awakened by a rocket attack. During the chaos, many of their soldiers are killed, leaving the group severely weakened. After the gunfire dies down, the group plans to leave, but Stryker is hesitant to move. AGU checks on him and is shocked to find that he's been shot in the chest. He then carries his friend, hoping they can reach a town to treat his injuries. But not long after, Stryker dies on his back. AGU is devastated by his death and screams over his body, pleading for him to wake up. However, the other soldiers manage to calm him down and take him away from there. Following this, the remaining members of the group seek refuge in a gold mine, hoping to find gold to pay for supplies. Yet over time, their ammunition runs out, leaving them unable to defend themselves against invading enemy forces. AGU talks with the commandant about this situation, but the latter tells him how much he cares for him and considers him a son. He then asks AGU to take care of him as a son would take care of his father. As they talk, Preacher arrives and rallies the soldiers to abandon their positions and surrender to the UN. He warns them that if they stay, they will starve to death or be killed. The commandant refuses to let them go, claiming they will die soon or be imprisoned. He also states that even if they return to their village, their families won't accept them because of their war crimes. This results in a heated argument between them, and Preacher even points a gun at the commandant. However, the latter knows that there are no more bullets left. AGU also points his weapon at the commandant, who feels betrayed by his actions. He eventually lets them go, but warns them that they will regret it when they are poor and forgotten in the middle of nowhere. The soldiers then withdraw, and as AGU follows them, the commandant looks at him with a hurt expression. Not long after, the group encounters some UN officers and surrenders to them. Days later, AGU and the young soldiers are sent to a missionary school in a safe part of the country. However, due to the long war, AGU feels uneasy in the peaceful environment and can't fit in with the other kids. He experiences drug withdrawal and frequently has nightmares about his past. Meanwhile, Preacher is also having trouble adjusting and believes the commandant was right. He eventually runs away from the school to rejoin the war. In the final scene, AGU talks to a school counselor who tries to get him to open up. AGU responds that he has done some terrible things but won't go into detail. He is worried that she won't understand him and will think of him as a monster. Instead, he tells her about how he used to be a good boy and was raised by a loving family. The film then ends as we see AGU finally joining the other boys to swim and play in the ocean.